When you think of a mobile game studio, odds are you'll think of Rovio, being the studio behind the massively successful Angry Birds franchise, producing many games for the series, getting billions of downloads all combined. But these days, many people tend to overlook the fact that Rovio are a massive name outside of the video game industry. They've produced multiple movies, TV shows, as well as building a massive presence outside of the video game industry. But because of Rovio's success mainly with the Angry Birds franchise, many people tend to highlight the problem that Rovio don't tend to develop many original titles, instead completely focusing on Angry Birds games, and the franchise as a whole, which has been successful for them, which perfectly makes sense from a business perspective, but it really does create the impression to people that the company doesn't tend to create many original games. There are currently available original games aside from Angry Birds, and the older ones aren't necessarily bad, but have never reached the heights of their most successful franchise. Bringing us perfectly to the topic of today's video, one of Rovio's forgotten games which really did have the potential to become a major hit for the studio, but instead didn't reach Rovio's ambitions, eventually leading them to pull a plug on the game and discontinue it. So prepare to take off, as I'm going to cover Retry, Rovio's forgotten masterpiece. Originally released back in 2014, Retry is one of my personal favourite mobile games, which I have a strong sense of nostalgia for. It was pretty much Rovio's response to Flappy Bird, the hit game which took the world by storm back in 2013 due to its addictive nature and difficulty, which I still can't master almost 8 years later. The success of the game of course led many developers to make clones of it, across multiple different app stores, pretty much what the mobile game industry is these days. Rovio at this time, around 2013 to be exact, were enjoying the major success and popularity of the Angry Birds games, and were beginning to experiment with the series, which they still are doing to this day, with most of these titles not really living up to the success of the originals. Though alongside expanding the already existing Angry Birds franchise, Rovio were looking to get started on their next hit original game. Although they did have some previous attempts at this, like Amazing Alex, as good as these games were, none of these titles ever reached Rovio's ambitions, leading to the creation of the now gone Rovio Level 11, a division of Rovio dedicated to develop the studio's new original games. Rovio of course at this point was seeing the success of Flappy Bird, and like they originally did with Crush the Castle and Angry Birds, they decided to take the successful concept of Flappy Bird, change it massively, add other successful elements from Rovio games, and Retry was born, whilst retaining the same addictiveness and difficulty of Flappy Bird of course. I'd definitely say in this case Rovio took inspiration from Flappy Bird rather than just straight up copy it, which is what made Retry stand out amongst the other Flappy Bird clone games. Built in the Unity engine, the whole goal of Retry is to guide a little airplane from one hangar to another, while trying to avoid obstacles and hitting the ground, with the plane being controlled by a single tap or hold, similar to its inspiration, but the plane would instead accelerate forward rather than flap up and down. You could also make the plane do loops and even go backwards. This mechanic was similarly implemented to other Finnish games, such as Tri-Plane Turmoil from 1996 and Super Sukla from 1994. If I'm talking about Retry though, I can't forget to mention its amazing 8-bit NES inspired art style. Although most people would say it was directly inspired from Flappy Bird rather than other 8-bit older games, I'd say it's generally just a bit of both, as Rovio just took this whole retro style and expanded on it so much in Retry. It's truly amazing and breaks the boundary of what a mobile game can be. The absolutely outstanding soundtrack by Ted Stryker, which I definitely think is worth listening to, as well as the animations and just the whole design of the game is just truly amazing, and I definitely think it's some of Rovio's best ever work. Bear in mind I'm trying my best to be not biased towards the game and actually looking at it through a reviewer's perspective. Anyway, going back to what I was saying before, even the opening animations of the game are just pure masterpieces, especially the 8-bit Rovio Flame Level 11 animation, and even the Retry logo. Every time you see them on start, you know you're in store for one great ride. It really does give the game a sense of uniqueness, and especially for a 2014 mobile game. Comparing this to mobile games of today, it's really disappointing to see how far the industry's fallen. Each level of Retry had a 3-star system like Rovio's other games, and would give you missions to complete in each level similar to Bad Piggies. The levels themselves contained coins to collect, which you could use to unlock extra checkpoint hangars throughout the levels called Retry points. Even different obstacles, weather, and even wind speeds can be seen throughout some of the game's tougher levels. The retry points themselves though I think help give the game the name Retry, as it's a no-brainer, it's a fairly addictive and quite hard game. The retry points act as a way for players to take a break in between levels, without having to restart the entire level most of the time. Although that is the main thing about checkpoints, as you crash so much in a game, it really does help keep players engaged. Retry's main currency is coins, which you can earn throughout levels like I mentioned before, from in-game achievements or by purchasing them with real money. There's also bolts which, if obtained in the game, can be used to apply modifications to your plane on certain levels if you're finding them difficult. But if you've played the game before or been closely watching the gameplay in this video, you'll definitely notice how far Rovio took the aspect of retrying in this game. Retry took this to a whole other level, as flying the little plane around different hills and cliffs in levels could sometimes get quite hard and challenging, and because of this, it makes the gameplay quite addictive, making you want to continue the level or try the whole thing again after making one mistake. Although the retry points do make it so you don't have to respawn right at the beginning of the level, most of them are unlockable by coins or watching an ad. There are also some free retry points as well, an effective way for Rovio to make money from the game without disrupting the core experience, which you just can't get on modern mobile games without trying to find the X button every 2 seconds. The game definitely does retain that sense of addictiveness and difficulty from its inspiration, but expanded its concept into a full progressible game, which is what made Retry so unique compared to the titles it was competing with. Rovio essentially got everything right with this game. It was visually appealing, fun to play, addictive, and overall a great game. You could draw a lot of comparisons between Retry and Angry Birds back when they were first in their launch states, as both games felt like they were success bound, as they both took concepts from two totally different games and further adapted them into new fun experiences, which you can clearly see in both Retry and Angry Birds if you put those games and their inspirations side by side. Retry at launch definitely felt like it was going to be Rovio's next big hit, and when that time eventually came in October 2014 after its soft launch earlier that year, Retry launched worldwide, and the game received mostly positive reviews from critics, with most praising the game for mainly taking the great things about Flappy Bird, especially the satisfaction of repetitively trying the same task whilst building a full game around the concept in a usual Rovio style. Without completely ripping them off, they of course did praise the game's retro style, inspired from classic 8-bit and 16-bit games, and in general, Retry was described by many reviewers as a fun pick up and play title, which showed Rovio could do so much more than just Angry Birds. The game was also pretty successful when it came out, becoming popular with existing Rovio fans and Flappy Bird fans as well, getting a fair amount of downloads and was competing amongst the top charts for some time. But unfortunately, this is where most of the positives and success of Retry come to an end. The game peaked during its first few months, never really getting any more popular than back when it first came out. Rovio expected the game to take off and become their next hit title, but that certainly wasn't the case. Despite Rovio's efforts to update the game and add new content to it every so often, it's just different promotional levels. I think I remember there being an Angry Birds Epic inspired level and a Slow-Mo Guys level, which I thought was pretty cool, as well as new worlds of course. The game never really got any more popular and just remained consistent, becoming less and less popular as the years went on. Eventually leading to the point in 2017 when Rovio decided to pull the plug on Retry and removed it from all app stores, as it wasn't worth making the game compatible with the newest hardware if it wasn't going anywhere. Rovio's Level 11 division also didn't last much longer after Retry, and after making one final game called Selfie Slam, Rovio seemed to abandon Level 11, and instead decided to focus on expanding already existing successful franchises, which I think is a real shame as Rovio, give them due, can make some pretty awesome games, though as of recording this video, I discovered that Level 11 actually split off from Rovio and became a separate studio called Dark Matter Games, sometime in 2017. They even still develop some games with Rovio. Despite there not being too much information on this, they surprisingly relisted Retry under a new name called Fail Plane 2D, for a short time back in early 2020. This version of the game is pretty much the same version that Rovio released, with all mention of Rovio and Level 11 being removed. This game though is jam-packed with ads, throwing away all the positives I gave the game in this video. Now though the game has since been removed for an unknown reason, which I assume is because of some issues between them and Rovio. You may be confused to why Retry failed to meet Rovio's expectations after I praised it. Setting aside my nostalgia for the game, Retry was a pretty solid game by Rovio, but sometimes good games don't always succeed and become forgotten relics of the past, hence the title of this video. But as I tend to do on this channel, let's have a look at what happened to Retry and why did it become one of Rovio's forgotten gems of the past. I think this can be nailed down to one core reason: an unfortunate time of release. You see, Retry's gameplay is largely inspired from Flappy Bird, a game which was extremely popular back in 2013 and 14, but as we all know, Flappy Bird was pulled from all app stores back in 2014 by its creator due to being criticised for its Super Mario assets, its addictive nature and many other reasons, which is really a topic for another video. Now after Flappy Bird was removed, people were frustrated of course, but then quickly moved on to different games, for example Crossy Road and Five Nights at Freddy's taking over the top charts. Because Retry was inspired from Flappy Bird, and how the game wasn't really popular anymore in late 2014 when Retry launched, it of course had a short lifespan of popularity with Rovio's fanbase and players as a whole, making it never take off despite how good of a game it was, just because people were already done and bored with Flappy Bird style games and have already moved on, meaning Retry didn't succeed as it followed an already dead gameplay style. Overall, it's really unfortunate how Retry ended up, but the game just goes to show that Rovio can still make great games outside of Angry Birds, and despite some of their original games these days not being too good, it does go to show what Rovio can create. Maybe Rovio will bring back Retry someday. I have more odds winning the £1 million lottery than that though, but you never know what could happen. But you know what you can do? You can go and plant some trees. No, I'm literally being serious. Thanks to the amazing people at Mayron Games who have been kind enough to sponsor this video, you can help save the planet by playing their new game Plant the World. Plant the World is a brand new location-based game where you can explore your area without going outside temporarily for obvious reasons, to collect resources in order to build civilizations of other players, as well as craft different strategic structures and so much more. You can even create teams which other people can join to further expand your empire, visit other players' civilizations using vehicles, boats and portals, as well as plant lots of different trees to help personalize your area, which brings me to the coolest part about this game. For every in-app purchase made in the game, when the game becomes profitable, over half of the profits will go towards planting real trees. As you know, planting virtual trees isn't going to save the world. Plant the World has just launched as I'm making this video, and is completely free and available to download on iOS and Android. Links to both are in the description. Thanks again to Mayron Games for sponsoring this video. Either way, that's pretty much all I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new for more content like this. Did you ever get to play Retry? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to share the video too, as well as check out my Twitter, Instagram and Discord server. Links to all are in the description too. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.